watching your material, you do relate a lot to your family and friends, like very personal stuff.
Yes.
How do you draw the line? Like what's okay and what's not? Or do you have a line, or you just go?
So now, again, just from experience, so I've crossed the line enough and upset family and friends, accidentally enough to know what the line is and what isn't. I've unfortunately, and I thought it was only me, but when I start to talk to some of my peers, they're like, oh yeah, we've all ruined relationships with comedy, but it's all accidental.
But do they understand? Are you just trying to be funny, or do you actually have a conversation with family and friends like, hey, listen, this might happen?
I'm a storyteller. So for me, it's like something, like everything I say, I think it depends what kind of person it is, what kind of family member, what kind of friend. Because sometimes some of my family and my friends be like, oh, you're making up details about that to make me sound like this. I'm like, yeah, I'm writing a story. It's not, it's you, but it's not you. Yeah. Like if I was going to do a bit about this today that you'd be like, oh, I feel like he's talking about us, you would recognize you, but I'm going to add details because that's my job. Sure. Like my part at the creative part is like, okay, how do I make this, like sensational? How do I make this funny? Sometimes it's not there. I have to add that. Yeah. If it was just telling a story, I'd be doing TED Talks. You know what I mean? Right. It would just be like, okay, I'm just reciting something. But what I've learned now too with my family and friends is I always try to protect the innocent, change names, change enough details. Some family I've, upset where they're never coming back, and it's just part of the game. What can I do? But I try now I think about it, because what happened is now my kids are older. So now I try to think about, listen, stuff I've said, crazy stuff on the internet that will always be there. I'll have to atone for that. I'll have to own up to that. If my kids want to ask me about that, we'll have a conversation. I'm trying to.
You talk about your kids as well.
I talk about them. I don't show pictures of them or anything, but I tell stories, whatever. So there's certain things that I've done that talked about that I'm like, hey, if they ain't gonna have a problem with that, I'm gonna speak to them about it. But what I try to do now moving forward is the new kind of brain me, is because my daughter, my oldest one, is 9. So now it's like I'm kind of saying, like, because I heard her, she said to me a couple of months ago, she was like, oh, Dad, she was like, at school, she was like, everybody thinks it's cool that like my dad's a comedian. She's like, but there's one girl, her dad says that I'm a dirty comedian and I curse a lot. So, and I was like, oh, how does that make you feel? She was like, I think their dad's a loser. And I was like, nice, me too. Yeah. And she was like, but it made me think, like, I don't want to, listen, if I'm cursing or talking about, crazy stuff, whatever, but like, I don't want to ever tell a story about like one of my daughters that like, something like uncomfortable about, like maybe something that would embarrass them in the future for comedy material. Like I see some of my peers talking, and no judgment at all, like doing bits about like their daughter's first period. It's like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not, even if it's funny in the moment, I'm like, yeah, but what is this really worth? Like, I want it to be like, again, I know, sometimes, my daughter's not necessarily going to love bits about, times when sex didn't go right with their mother. But, like that's just something where adults like, whatever, like, but, that's just stuff adults relate to. But as far as like my kids, I'm just going to like, if I do material about them, it's very much like making them look good, if I can.